Welcome to the Go One More Step podcast. I'm Brian White. I'm a veteran, I'm a survivor of my brother's suicide, and I'm talking to people about overcoming challenges of all kinds.
Got it.
So welcome, man.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, long time. It's fun. It's fun catching up with guys from the old guard, as it were. And so this is the sixth episode that I'm doing, and you're the first fellow vet that I'm talking to. Strangely enough.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's been kind of an interesting journey with who spoke up and said, "Yeah, I've got a story to tell." So this whole thing started from doing a fundraiser for a veteran suicide charity, and then I said, "Hey, let's talk to people who have dealt with hard stuff." And I figured probably 3/4 of our community would say, "Yeah, I've got a story to tell."
Yeah.
And the
Definitely.
first like 5 people I talked to are actors or in other walks of life. But I think that kind of drives home that everybody deals with stuff.
I think a lot of guys from our community, especially if they're still in the business or they've now transitioned into something else, they're really reluctant to kind of put anything out there that can be used. So I get it. And a lot of it's the macho attitude, but I got nothing to hide. So, if I can get into things and talk about it with you that helps somebody else out there, I'm fair game.
Yeah, and that's my thinking. I mean, and I blame Hollywood or popular culture or whatever it is, but there's this image of veterans and military guys that is, for lack of a better term, bullshit. Which is the whole Lone Ranger, the solo warrior thing. You look at the highest functioning supposedly military units and all that, and special operations teams and all that. In the movies, it's always one dude taking down a battleship. These guys can't tie their boots without their teammates. And it's by design. We're taught to operate as part of a unit, but then when things start to go bad in life, the expectation then is that we bear it alone, which is stupid to me.
Right.
So we'll lead with me thanking you for being willing to step up and just talk about it, because we need to really kind of normalize being okay with not being okay, and saying things are not always okay, and that's not the end of the world. And we need to model vulnerability and saying out loud that sometimes things suck and we need help. And destigmatize the getting of help. So
yeah,
it's awesome that we finally got to a fellow veteran. Yeah, and I get the guys that are still in the classified world. They don't want to put their name and face on the internet, and I got that. And then we develop a reluctance to exposure that some people just never really get over.
I think a lot of guys don't get over it. They stay hidden until we all find out. We all get that phone call that so and so killed themselves, or in a hospital, and everybody's like, "Hey, does anybody know so and so?" And everybody's like, "Yeah, I remember that guy from like 15 years ago. How's he doing?"
Yeah.
Oh, he's dead.
Nobody had his phone number and nobody knew where he was living. Yeah, we disappear, and then if you get all the way out like I did, and like drop your clearance and stop taking government work and all that, it's even harder to stay connected.
Yeah, I think when I get out, I didn't burn any bridges or anything but I definitely isolated myself. A lot of it because things were pent up there at the end. I was pretty disgruntled on the way out. So I lost contact with a lot of people. For those who don't know me, I retired with Chief Warrant Officer 3 from the Marine Corps back in 2017. I was a counterintelligence, human intelligence officer, which is not the highest rank, but it's pretty high rank getting out. So I was having issues on the way out. I was running some businesses, thought I knew everything, thought I had a good plan, and then the plan kind of went to shit. And I wasn't smart enough to realize the plan was going to shit until it was too late. So that's some of the things that we're going to get into. today. But for those of you who don't know me, some of you might even know me as Ackerman because that used to be my name.
Yeah.
A lot of guys knew me as
what drove I've been curious what drove the name change.
So long story short is when my wife was pregnant with the twins, it was a high risk pregnancy. The doctors were asking a lot of genetics based questions, about, my family background, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And the long story short is, I was born Kevin Charles Johnson, March 16th, 1979. And my father wasn't really my father. He adopted me. I had a biological father out there. And when I met my biological father, my parents, the people I called mom and dad all my life, were pretty unhappy about that, as well as some other issues that were going on. And so they disowned me. And I said, you know what, we're going to correct a historical mistake. And I took on the name Johnson.
Okay. And when did all that play out?
2013.
Okay. Had you known before that you were adopted?
No.
Wow. And that was, so you said 2013. So that was right in the wheelhouse of everything else that was going on.
Correct. Yes.
Ew.
I was at the basic course, the CIA basic course in Dam Neck, Virginia, when that all happened. I had just returned from Afghanistan. Terrible deployment. It was absolutely the worst time for something like that to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever been to the schoolhouse as an instructor, but it is probably the stressful position.
Yeah. Yeah. I was an instructor on 9/11.
Okay.
We were teaching, we were doing some role play in the booths that you probably remember very well, that U-shaped hallway. And I kept popping out, I'd go and I'd do like a 15-minute event, go out, see what the new update was. And first it was, hey, the weirdest thing, a plane hit the World Trade Center. And like, I was picturing a Cessna. Oh, well,
Yep.
that's weird. And I went out and I looked and they had the live feed up there. And it just so happened that I happened to be in the instructor lounge when on the live feed, the second plane hit.
It got real.
Yeah, and it got real fast. And I walked back into the classroom as everybody was typing up their stuff. And I said, gentlemen, because at the time we hadn't gone co-ed, I said, gentlemen, we have job security for the next 3 decades.
Yeah, that was not a lie either.
Yeah.
Things got fast really quick, and it never really stopped until I retired.
Yeah, and
pretty sure
we went. So when I started there, we were putting 3 classes a year through. Not very long after 9/11, we had 2 classes on deck at any given time.
that was my 3 years.
Yeah,
at the schoolhouse.
The acceleration was it was like
unbelievable.
an F-18 taking off on full after, just went vertical and sped up.
And I got to the schoolhouse as CWO2. The enlisted instructors just had a really big shit sandwich, and they were taking big bites and swallowing the best they could. And you tried to help them out, but it was just the op tempo was worse. I'd rather go out back to Afghanistan and get shot at.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. Like all of us, every single one of us individually called the monitor and the MOI sponsor on like 12 September. And all got the same answer, like, no, my friend. If anybody is locked into a duty, you are it. You are the only non-deployable Marines in the Marine Corps right now. Like, come on, man.
It's funny how everybody, wants to go out there.
Yeah.
It's
In hindsight, feels rather foolish, doesn't it?
It does, but I got no regrets.
Yeah. Me either. Yeah. I still say I still say 2006 in Fallujah was probably as good as it ever got for me in uniform.
I think that's the time period I met you, 2005, 2006, and you were ready.
Yeah.
I remember it was kind of a weird conversation. Like Chief Warrant Officer Brian White is getting out at like 16 years in the Marine Corps. And like, what?
Yeah.
He's already past the shit or get off the pot time. Why would you not?
Yeah. Well, so I was at 13 years, first off. 16 would have been absolutely foolish. And it was like 13 years is that kind of like you make the decision, because if you take the next duty station, then you're at 16, 17, and you're a fool for not staying into 20.
Right.
I had a job offer back at Virginia Beach doing some really fun and interesting things, and decided the stars had aligned just so. And so I did it.
No regrets.
No.
No.
And so now your story picks up. So you're chief warrant officer, come back. How many tours did you do?
5 total. But you know, I was one of those guys who volunteered for every deployment.
Yeah.
You know, so not only did I go to Iraq a few times, I went to Afghanistan a few times. I went to the southern Philippines. Not many people know that that was a combat zone.
Yeah.
Operation Enduring Freedom. But I've been all over Asia. I've been on ship a couple times. You know, I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan a lot, but I was never in Okinawa, Japan. I was always somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, California, I was in Iraq. And you remember that grind. It was 7 months, 7 months, 5, no end in sight. You know, so the op tempo right after 9/11, I would say almost after USS Cole was bombed in August 2000, things just picked up when they started talking about force protection. I volunteered to be the force protection guy. I started going all over Asia. And then I got recruited into the CI human community, and it just was nonstop. At the time. And, you know, I was married at the time. She broke fairly quickly. Because I volunteered for every deployment and I didn't hide that fact. So I was single for a little bit, and then
you didn't do like some guys, baby, they just keep selecting me. I don't know what to tell you.
I think that might have worked like the first or the second time, but
after that,
it's like, you know,
we don't give our partners nearly enough credit.
No, they don't. And you know, I met the right girl near the end of my career. And once I had kids, I said, you know, I got to go. It's time to leave the Marine Corps. And to be honest, I didn't have a choice. I had to retire at 20 because some of the surgeries that I had prevented me from being able to pass a physical fitness test. I had to get out. My Achilles tendon surgery was one of the worst ones because the doctor told me, look, you're never going to run again. You know, and that was my go-to stress relief was put some music on, run 10 miles, you know, to just beat it out of me. And that was taken from me in 2015. And I think that's kind of what led into some of my big problems, because I had no venue to relieve stress.
No outlet.
So what did I experience over my career? Obviously, I had combat deployments like most CI human Marines during my tenure. But interestingly enough, when I went to a outpatient PTSD program, which was awesome at Camp Pendleton, they went through my medical record, talked to me, and then I was quickly referred over to the concussion care clinic because they went through my record and documented about 13 times where I had been knocked out cold.
Jesus.
So, you know, I remember the therapist going through it. I mean, she's like, I've never seen this before. This is actually pretty scary. You know, we went through it, and, you know, it was one of the best things I ever did because I learned a lot. So, you know, the first time I got knocked out was in 2003. Of course, the Marine Corps Martial Arts program. You know, counter to a leg sweep. I hit the back of my head on the ground. And then, according to everybody else was at the course, I trained for the rest of the day. And then at the end of the day, I was sitting on my pack and I didn't really know where to go. Of course, I don't remember any of this. So, you know, George Bush was the president at the time, and they asked me who the president of the United States was, and I said Bill Clinton. And they said, well, we got a live one here. And they took me down to the hospital, and they said my brain had swelled inside my head, and they took active measures to try to get it down. And I don't remember anything until about 3 o'clock in the morning that following morning. The issue is, they patched me up, they sent me home. Monday morning, I was back in the martial arts course.
Yeah. Yeah, go figure.
It is what it is.
Concussion protocol back then, like, we were like the professional athletes we were.
Right. But one good thing that happened to me when I went to the outpatient program is one of our homework assignments was to go back and try to pinpoint when we became different people. I was able to trace when I became a different person back in 2003 when I first hit my head.
Okay.
Life decisions were made. I volunteered into the CI Human occupational MLS. Divorce started, at least the beginnings of it started. I just became a different person.
Yeah.
The emotions went away, except for rage and anger. And it just got progressively worse. And, there was 12 other times where I got knocked out, patched back up and put back out there in the street to go do what I was supposed to do. And being a CI Human Marine, if you're not deployable, you're useless to the company, or at least that's the perception they put out. So guys who are hurting, either physically or mentally or spiritually, you hide it. Because you don't want to be that guy that gets left behind while the whole unit goes forward, because that just sucks. You don't want to be the guy that gets left behind. I had a large amount of traumatic brain injuries, and when you injure your brain, it grows back. It heals itself, but it's different. And I haven't spent nearly enough time working on it. But I didn't understand it at the time.
You don't realize what's driving that.
I was ambitious. I volunteered for deployments, and I was a bit of a savage on these deployments, and I led other Marines and taught them to be savages as well. And when I retired, that outlet was gone. It's like, I couldn't wait. It's like you retire, you try to focus on your family, and you struggle. I was running a business at the time. Thought I knew everything, and it just kind of went to shit from there. We talked about this previously, but like when I went through the transition program for the Marine Corps, I think because of my senior rank and the fact that I had a plan, a lot of the classes that Marines get forced into, such as writing a resume or applying for college and education benefits, I completely ignored all of those and didn't even go to the classes. I was exempted from the classes because I signed a piece of paper that says I'm running a business, and that was my plan. And I regretted it. And it wasn't until I started applying for jobs and I realized I didn't know what I was doing. And I think when I chose to start applying for federal jobs, I applied to over 200 federal jobs with a resume that was just garbage because I didn't know how to do one. It wasn't until I reached out to some fellow veterans who have been through the process and steered me in the right direction, fixed my resume, and then, well, hey, guess what? People are actually calling me.
But I'll
tell you,
it's really, I think back and I was in a slightly similar situation where I knew where I was going. I had the job offer. It was, so I have like 3 memories of that entire class. And I opted out of everything I could because I was set. And then the job after that was because of who I knew. And then you get to the point where you actually start over, and it gets really frightening. And really,
it does. It's really frightening quick when you especially when you have a family to provide for. And I'm not ashamed to say it, but after I retired from the Marine Corps, my business failed. I ended up in bankruptcy, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Which was also one of the best things that ever happened to me. But when it was going through the process, it was pretty scary. So how did that happen? So I was running a custom knife company. I made knives. I also sold other people's knives. And the venues in which I would sell were gun shows, trade shows, online retail, auction houses. The company made good money. However, most of that money was made during like holiday seasons.
Yep.
So in order to fill the gap during the slow months, sometimes I would take out personal loans, to cover some of the expenses, and it usually worked out fine. Now, if you get sick or there's a problem in the family, and then the money that you borrowed doesn't get paid off, it eats your profits. And then I ended up having a company that was kind of spending what it makes.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you start spending your banking account money, your savings account. You don't adjust your quality of life. We realized what was going on. We tried to move to the Philippines. We thought it would be, because my wife's Filipino and it used to be cheap over there. We could just live off of retirement with kings and queens, get to the Philippines, and everybody who had promised to help us didn't help us. And then we also realized that it's a cash-based economy. So if you want a house, if you want a car, if you want things, you need cash to do so. There's no such thing as credit over there. There's no such thing as a mortgage. There's car loans, but they're all the same price as it is over here. So it didn't work out. Plus, my wife got skin cancer at the time, so we made a decision to move back to the United States. I tried to restart my company, and it just didn't work out very well. So we kind of crossed a red line finances wise. I sought out a lawyer. I was seeking a Chapter 13 bankruptcy where they consolidate everything and then you pay it off over time. And the lawyer said, "Look, you're a slam dunk Chapter 7. This is what I recommend." And boom, I filed for bankruptcy, and then they realized that the governments of the world were shutting down the entire planet for COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic. So talk about good. I filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy right before the country's all shut down.
Wow.
And I can only imagine what would have happened if I did not file for bankruptcy. Because my entire business was based on the ability to get out there and sell product to people face to face, and everything shut down. Thankfully, I had a little bit of foresight, and I had gotten my real estate license a few months prior to that. So the knife company got killed. The bankruptcy got discharged. All of my debts were completely removed. I was starting over from scratch. But real estate took off,
It did.
pretty quickly at that time.
Yeah.
Business was good. The skill traits from a CI Human guy going into real estate are pretty much the same, because the most shady people in the world are realtors.
Any realtors watching, we apologize. And you're probably the exception.
They know.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, we went from rock bottom to top of the tier. Really good income coming in. Unfortunately, though, with real estate, if a customer changes their mind on a house, or the house doesn't close, or the loan falls apart, you're really at the whims of God, forces of nature, whatever you want to call it. If that home doesn't close, then you don't get a paycheck.
Right.
I still got my retirement and all that, so we did fine in those circumstances. But we went from bankruptcy to pretty healthy. And when Afghanistan fell the way that it fell, and members of my community started dying of fentanyl overdoses, I started getting interested in going back into federal service of some sort. When I retired in 2017, I said the problems of the world is somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
And then I look at my children and I say, if something happens to them, I could have been there to do something about it. Then, it's just bad thinking. So I started applying, and now I'm accepted for the Border Patrol, and I'm waiting to work.
Good. Yeah. Man, when Afghanistan fell, that knocked a lot of people sideways.
Yeah, I'm sure it pushed buttons pretty significantly, and I flashed back to my time in Afghanistan. I knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Uh, it was no surprise to me, but the sheer disrespect of it
Yeah.
was what really bothered me. It still bothers me.
I don't think anybody was surprised by how it went, but yeah, you're right. The callousness and the disregard for it. And going back to TAP, so when I got out, it was 2007. So I was in TAP classes in 2006. And one of the things that I do remember was the instructor saying, I want you to keep this in mind when you get out there and you start thinking that because you're a veteran, the world owes you anything. All those yellow ribbons you see on people's cars that say support the troops, those are magnets. Those come right off.
I think it's
hit hard. Like, what you mean? The world doesn't, the country doesn't universally adore us. Because early on with Iraq and Afghanistan, the troops were very much lionized, and I think it was America kind of overcorrecting for what we did to Vietnam veterans coming back. But yeah, you always knew that had a shelf life.
It did. It did. And once you're out of the Marine Corps, to be honest with you, most people don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
So that in itself, if you're struggling, can bring you down even more.
Yeah.
You don't know where to reach out for help.
Yeah.
You drown. And it is what it is. I'm full of advice for guys who are out there struggling. I was struggling in the Marine Corps, but hit it until the very end. And when I did seek help, I was kind of bastardized by the Intel Battalion for doing so, but I didn't care because I was out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was on my way out. I didn't care. They were very unhappy with me, but I didn't care. And then, I isolated myself, went through some problems, ended up in bankruptcy, and then kind of started how to climb back out of the hole. Am I completely out of the hole now? I'm pretty close. Sometimes it sucks you back in. What gets me out of the hole? What gets me up in the morning? Obviously my family's my first priority.
It's a strong why. Knowing the why and having one that powerful is really good.
But it's also a key stressor at the same time. When you have little kids that are depending on you and they want to go to karate class, but karate class is $500 a month.
Right.
And you just don't have the finances to support it. You want to put them in a good school, but private schools aren't cheap. But if you put them in public school, then you got a bunch of kids twerking on the side of the road and knife fighting. So you figure that out. And focusing on what their needs are gets you going, but sometimes it can drag you down too. Because you fail. Not knowing, because friends, and when you're in the military, friends are easy to come by. You have a lot of friends around you. When you get out into the civilian world, and I know you can talk to this too, it's just different. With civilians, I had a hard time making friends with civilians because, like you, I have this natural bullshit filter. And when somebody's feeding you bullshit, and you kind of like, okay, I registered that, but I'm gonna let it go.
Right.
Thing, or I just registered that, I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna let it go. I was like, okay, you know what? Whenever I'm hanging out with this people, I'm letting it go, and that's not the situation I want to be in. Right. So, I'm just not gonna call you anymore.
It's hard because the military, and it doesn't matter what service you're in. We like to make a whole big thing about Semper Fidelis with the Marine Corps, and we're different and special. The military experience puts you in a place with a lot of like-minded people, and it puts you through the same formative experiences. So you've got that shared baseline that everybody has. And I'll be the first to say there are a lot of pricks in Marine Corps. There are a lot of people I wouldn't want to spend 5 minutes with. But it's a lot easier to find a common ground to start conversations with when it's somebody else who understands, who knows what it is to have served. And yeah, finding people who have that baseline of shared interest and branching out and finding other interests that you might share with people can be really hard. And then you realize like they don't have any of the same background memories or formative experiences that you do, and trying to find common ground is tough.
It is. And when you are struggling with something and you want to talk about it and you can't talk to your spouse about it,
Yeah.
you're not surrounded by your buddies who,
Yeah.
if you say something to them and then they make fun of you for it, then it kind of weird how it like builds you up, like,
Yeah.
all right, stop being like, okay, good, I'm good, like.
Yeah, and kind of on the other side of the coin, a lot of people who have never served really just they don't know how to talk to us.
No.
I mean, they don't cover that in college or high school either. Hey, when you run into an Iraq vet, the first question you ask should not be how many people did you kill?
Correct. Yep.
Or how many friends did you lose? Like, let's not go straight there. Let's talk about the weather and last night's ball game and get to know each other's spouses' names first, and then maybe we'll start down that road.
And I made that mistake when I applied to work for the police department as a anti-terrorism kind of watch officer, if you will, for Las Vegas Police Department. Right. And I had prepared myself for the interview, and got to the interview, and then I made the mistake. They asked me a time. The question was, tell us about a time where you had a struggle and then you overcame that struggle. And I thought it'd be a real good idea to talk about the time I helped put some Marines in a body bag after intelligence failed. I was kind of relating it to, I've seen what happens when the intelligence fails or the utilization of intelligence fails, and it just had the complete opposite effect. It was,
yeah, and when you freaked out a room full of cops, you've hit some lines.
And that's the truth of it,
That's tough,
man. So don't do that. I think when you bounce ideas off of other veterans, it helps. Guys have job interview process and put in their applications and got accepted. Those are the individuals you have to reach out to. I didn't do that at first. And I made so many mistakes because I did not seek out that guidance. But once I got that guidance, then I got accepted. So
I got good.
And I think Border Patrol will be a lot of like-minded people, but also a good mix of civilian people, if you will. But the mission is important, so I see that as a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. So it's fair to summarize by saying you've dealt with some shit and are currently still dealing with some shit. And the analogy you used of the hole and are you out once you're out, that kind of thing is a good one. I tend to use a path because one of my biggest problems, again, with how things are portrayed in media is you always have the catharsis moment, where Will Hunting breaks down and cries and hugs Robin Williams and everyone lives happily ever after. And a lot of the things that you're talking about, and I'm sorry if this is news to you, and I'm sorry to be very blunt, it's always going to be there.
Yep.
And so to me, I kind of default to the analogy of walking a path where sometimes the path is rockier, sometimes it's steeper, but you're never not on that path. It's never not there. There's no final session with the therapist where he says, all right, you're good. And you walk off into the sunset, and that's never an issue again. I mean, for all of us, the time we served is always going to be there. For you, the medical issues you've dealt with, the things you've dealt with, that's always going to be there. So now what keeps your feet moving, because we talk about go one more step, and it's a nice, really pithy, simple thing. Just take a step, just take a step. And it works, but the trick is finding what it takes for each of us as individuals to physically or metaphorically lift one foot, put it in front of the other, and then do it again. What gets you one step at a time when you hit that place where it has to be one step at a time?
So, I would say, my family is the biggest reason why. If I hit a brick wall, I get my ass up and I get over the wall.
Yeah.
Because I guess the sense that I can't let them down is there. And anybody who has kids, especially kids my age, my twin sons are 10, my daughter's 4. They're just natural, inquisitive brightness is there. So no matter how terrible I may be feeling or irritated I may be, you get your ass up and you do what you need to do. And my wife is probably, bless you. My wife is one of the most supportive spouses you can possibly have. And initially I would not tell her things,
Right.
but she learned how to kind of interrogate it out of me. And she knows that if I'm in a crowded room with people and then I leave, to just let me go.
Right.
If I'm overstressed, overstimulated, and I need to take a step back, because I'm in that mode.
Yeah.
Then I go outside, just kind of don't chase me down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's darkly funny, not funny, haha. That people's natural inclination is they want to give comfort, and what that means for a lot of people is touch and hugs and closeness. When and a lot of times what we need is a little more room around us, and we need to expand our bubble, as it were. And so the attempt to give comfort and aid actually becomes counterproductive.
Yeah, when you're in Walmart and you're thinking about, throat punching a guy who just walked up to you and started talking to you for no reason, that's not the time to try to give me a hug.
Right. Yeah.
That's when you grab me by the hand, we walk and we refocus on something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or go to the fishing lure section.
I feel like, I feel like, and I know there's like, I think 24 to 27 veterans who kill themselves every minute. And, most of the veterans that I've known are not suicidal. They're more homicidal.
Yeah.
Nature, but,
I'll always say there are 3 types of untruths. There are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics. And it's an increasing level of severity. And so the 22 a day thing is now being contested, actually.
good.
You've got a lot of organizations that kind of latched onto that 22 a day, and it's part of their name and part of the ethos, and the number 22 comes up over and over and over again. Then now people are starting to say, that's based on VA data, and the VA offers statistics, which are bigger lies than damned lies very often.
Yes.
And what they're not accounting for is they're counting suicides as like self-inflicted gunshot wound with a note, or things like that. And what's not being counted is self-harm gone over the line, is drug overdoses that may or may not have been deliberate, destructive harm-seeking behavior. A veteran wraps his car around a light pole and dies, and they think it's adrenaline junkie stuff, and it was an accident where it might have been the veteran drove the car into the pole. So there's talk or going around about, it's probably a lot more than 22 on average a day. For me, the number is almost irrelevant. One is entirely too many. The other thing that shouldn't have, but did surprise me the first time I read it, the overwhelming majority of veteran suicides are non-combat veterans.
And that says something, doesn't it?
Yeah. The combat vets, they do the harm seeking and the thrill seeking and the violent behavior. It's the ones who didn't go or went and nothing happened that commit suicide more often. Oddly enough, and not oddly, it kind of makes sense once you think about it, but it's questioning of the status that exacerbates problems.
Right.
It's the survivor's guilt. It's the non-participatory guilt, because we get raised, and you and I both laughed when we talked about how many times we volunteered, and kept asking for more. And it's burned into your ethos when you're still not when you're still not a fully formed adult human male. The prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop well into our 20s. And there we are, 19, 20, 21, going, send me, let's go, let's do it.
Right.
So yeah, it can be very damaging when you're thoroughly indoctrinated into the idea that this is your purpose, and then you don't fulfill it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another thing is, and you alluded to it a couple of times, that really tends to shake us out of our moorings, is that loss of status, or that change in status. And we have a really hard time with no longer being a Marine or a soldier or an airman or a sailor or whatever it is, and thinking we've lost a big chunk of what and who we are, and seeking to find something to refill that can be very difficult. And then you come out of a community like ours, where we all very honestly, in our most honest moments, believe we're the absolute top of the world on all things. Like, we're the best of the best. And it's when your first job application doesn't result in an offer, and then your 200th job application doesn't result in an offer, that messes with guys' heads who are used to not
my head.
failing.
Tell you what, I felt like garbage.
Yeah.
Then I had a wife that was like, "Hey, how's the job application going?" Like, 200 something applications, and I didn't really understand what was going on, and it was disgruntled. I was disgruntled, and I called an HR guy, and this made it even worse. And I called this HR guy, and I kind of interrogated him over the phone.
Yeah.
More like elicitation anyway, but he said the long story short was, look, there's unofficial guidance out there that we have too many middle-aged white veterans on staff. So that in itself was like a kick in the nuts too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, until I saw it. One of my other advice was, so family helps me get out of the hole, keeps me going down the path. The other veterans out there with shared experiences.
Yeah.
Once you know to reach out to them and bother them, they're not going to see it as you bothering them, but that's how you see it. And then all of a sudden you're talking on the phone,
Yeah.
And they're sharing information, and you're like, what a dumbass I was for not asking in the first place.
Yeah, we especially as veterans, we are fantastically good at not understanding basic truths. Yes. and not like looking at the other side of it. Like, anybody we served with, anybody I ever served with could call me and ask for help or advice, and I would be overjoyed to give it, even if they weren't in trouble.
Yep.
Like my the reason Fallujah is so glowing for me in my memory is because I had a group of guys I was mentoring and developing and building up.
Yep.
And so somebody calling and saying, "Hey, Brian, can you take a look at my resume?" I'd walk around with a goofy grin for a day. But then I think about, like, hey, what if I sent this guy my resume? Well, I don't want to bother him. And we don't make the connection.
Right. Big problem. And once
Yeah,
you get
it
over
really is. It really, really is.
once you get over it, and you're right, you do walk around with a smile on your face for probably a month,
Yeah.
um, because this guy reached out that you met once, in Kuwait on the way to
Yeah.
Iraq. You're like, hey, you know what? I remember you. Okay, and I would go out of my way to help anybody that needed a job.
Yeah.
Um, you know, when I start working for Border Patrol, if there's anybody out there who needs a job, give me a call because I will help you. Um, once I start working there. So, family, reaching out to veterans that with shared experiences, that's a huge help.
Yeah.
And it saves you so much stress because there's guys and gals out there that have been through it and they can give you a shortcut and, save yourself a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
Um,
The your analogy, the hole. Have you heard this one where the veterans in the hole? It's
mhm.
kind of like an Aesop's fable, and the command tosses him a shovel and says, "Dig your way out." And so he's only digging the hole deeper. And the chaplain walks by and says, "You can pray your way out of the hole." And lo and behold, a rope doesn't appear from the heavens. And the medical officer walks by and tosses some pills down. Now he's in a hole and addicted to painkillers. And then a fellow veteran jumps in right there with him. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Don't worry. I've been here. I know how to get us out."
Funny story about the VA and the prescriptions. Like I went to the VA hospital once I pulled my a back muscle. I could stand
Mhm.
up, and that was like a year ago. And they still keep sending me these muscle relaxers that I don't use.
Yeah.
And I don't ask for them. I don't request prescription refills. They just show up at my mailbox. And I'm like, what
Mhm.
the hell? Like I never even used them.
Yeah.
Um,
It's frightening.
it's scary. It's the VA is so broken. Um, so use your TRICARE. If you're retired, use your TRICARE.
Yeah, really, for sure. It's incredible. The reliance on pharmaceuticals, like to me, as a country, we're just way over the top, and the VA and the military medical is even worse. Like I need to be convinced it's time to take ibuprofen. I'm just so I'm almost violently anti-pill because I see that and I see what it does to guys. And like now there's like legitimate medical research coming out showing that exercise is just as sometimes more effective than psychotropics.
Absolutely. And I do believe that.
Yeah.
Um, there's some medications that I just can't avoid.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and it's not a blanket thing. There are life saving and life affirming and life changing medications out there. It bothers me that the medical industry is an industry.
oh yes, yes. That stuff. Like my lisinopril for high blood pressure. I've when we went through my medical record and they looked at every blood pressure reading that I had, they're like, from the get go, 18 years old, your blood pressure was pretty high and just got higher. You should probably take these pills every day. I'm not going to argue with that. If
Right?
there
Yeah,
was something,
yeah.
if there was something natural I could take that wasn't made in China, um, that could help me, then I'd be game. But I'm just stuck with it for now, and I'm okay with that because I want to be around to see my kids grow. But yeah, the muscle relaxers and painkillers, and I was like,
Oh yeah. Oh
no, it's not.
yeah. So I
It's not
mean,
good.
you got somebody who's isolated, dealing with a lot of issues, and now you're just going to add a chemical dependency.
Yep,
And it's just one more issue. It's not solving anything. It's exacerbating the problem.
it is. So another thing that gets me going, and it's not for everybody, was a return to the Catholic faith for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't push my values on other people.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, I put my kids into a Catholic school, and I started going to church on Sundays, and I come out feeling lighter. Um, and some of it was just because the people in the school, in the church, just are genuinely good people.
Mhm.
Uh, you meet them, you talk to them. They watch each other's kids at the baseball games. Most of them are veterans.
Yeah.
There's big Air Force bases here and all that. I think at some point in folks' lives, they're going to start questioning their souls, and what happens after death, and the things that we've done in life that we may or may not question. I do feel that faith helps me. So when I am struggling and I need to take that next step, a little bit of faith thrown into that mix of good things that keeps you going, um, is a good thing. I don't see
Yeah,
that as a
absolutely.
bad
Yeah.
thing. Definitely can't rely on it 100%. I can't go to Catholic church and then expect a paycheck to magically show up.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not how it works. But when I do go to church and I go through it, and my kids are with me, my family, and we talk to other people, I just feel better. And it helps me take that next step. Not for everybody, but
Yeah.
I find it to be helpful.
Yeah, and it works. And faith is a very powerful motivator for people. And then like, and one thing about any religion is ritual is a very affirming and very therapeutic thing wherever you find it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And so the ritual of going on Sunday and Catholic church especially, sit, kneel, stand, sit. I used to call it the Catholic Olympics. But like you get to a point where you've basically memorized how the service is going to go. And it becomes in its own way meditative. It's just like people who turn making their morning coffee into a ritual or whatever it may be. And there's a power in that. And there's a very undeniable and proven power in the good for your mental and emotional and spiritual health that ritual can do. So yeah, it absolutely 100%. If it helps, it's great.
And you just reminded me of something, and I just wanted to talk about it real quick.
Mhm.
So one of the things I used to do when I struggled, was to focus in on something that kind of turns off the background noise.
Yep.
So, either, making a knife, or working
Yeah.
on a dresser, or doing some kind of woodwork, or going fishing, and,
Yeah.
just being outdoors in general without, the distractions or the background noise around you. You mentioned the word flow.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
doing something you're doing something productive, not thinking about what happened or how you were starving to death in
Right.
2011 in Afghanistan, because the battalion commander threw out all the pastries. Um, True story.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I believe every word of it. You didn't even have to expound. I saw the whole thing play out in my mind.
Yeah, the battalion commander was big on cross. He was a CrossFit and a paleo diet. So this dumbass threw away all pastries, all carbs, and was only feeding his Marines vegetables and meat. And he was wondering why they were passing out on patrol in the heat of Helmand Province. Talk about PTSD.
Yeah, really. We really are our own worst enemies. We really are.
So when those kind of memories come up, you go find something to do, whether it's the gym, work on a project, get outside, go fishing, hunting. For some people that helps, but for
Yeah.
me, it just reminds me of certain things.
Yeah.
Um, but going out and fishing, and if I catch a fish, great. If I don't, I don't care. I just went
Yeah.
outdoors. I had that peace and quiet in
Get
the background.
outside, get into some green space. Yeah. Yeah, that I tell you, this morning I woke up in a foul mood. And I don't know why. I it just happens. I was in a foul mood. And as I was getting ready to for my morning workout, I was in a foul mood and I was doing foul mood things and thinking foul mood thoughts. and like really looking forward to a work phone call that I was going to just absolutely unleash on people about. And then I did my workout, and I was in a slightly less foul mood. And it wasn't, part of it is the chemical dump that a workout gives you, but it wasn't that hard to work out. I'm old and I don't go full speed all day, every day anymore. But just having done that part of the day and focusing entirely on the ritual of that and tracking reps and weights and everything else took me out of the headspace of thinking of, I call it pre-arguing, getting ready for a phone call that happened at 6 p.m. tonight, but it just breaks that mental cycle of the monkey mind, that little monkey running around your head with a hammer, whacking on pain and anger receptors. And if that's working out, great. If that's woodwork, if that's making something, every morning I do the New York Times puzzles. I do the mini crossword and the Sudokus, whatever I can get for free without paying them for a subscription. And then I do some chess puzzles. Anything that makes you focus in, even for a short time, really can short circuit a lot of those negative loops.
And your coworkers will appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Well, if they knew, they would.
Right.
Well, all they know is we had a productive and pleasant phone call, which is very probably at least 60% a direct result of today not being a rest day.
Okay.
Yeah. And and shoot, 2006, Brian, hearing this, wouldn't believe it, but meditation helps. And choose your style.
I think it does.
Yeah. Choose your style. It doesn't have to be transcendental, like super, super patchouli scented hippy dippy. Just focusing on your breath, on the sensations for a few rounds. Give it whatever name you need to. Navy SEALs call it box breathing, so they don't feel less manly when they do it. Whatever. But it works. At least it works for me.
When I went through the outpatient program for PTSD and the concussion care clinic, one of the things they do is you had to participate in these yoga sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like twice a week for an hour. And it was kind of a standing joke because all the combat veterans would go in there, lay down on the mat, and they would just go to sleep.
Yeah.
Or it was like an adult nap time.
Yeah.
They were very happy with that because you settle in, relax, get up recharged. So there's something to be said for taking a nap in the middle of the day. I don't know, but
my boss disagrees, but I think it's fantastic.
I have this prescription that says I'm supposed to take a nap.
Yeah. Dr. Ravi Shankar said that I need,
But yeah, I feel you. I'm struggling to think of what other advice I could put out there for them. But, for me, the big thing is family, veterans, friends, reaching out to them, a little bit of faith thrown into the mix. And just reaching out when you need help before it's the last second.
If people were willing to focus on those three things, and the faith is what you're going to make it. Everybody has some form of belief system, and if there's a community inherent in that, and also a series of rituals, all the better.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, just the willingness to ask for help.
That's the big one.
Just the willingness to ask for help. Just say, I'm not okay. Even a little bit. And it's work. This week I had a massive, and my wife celebrated. I said, I need to show you some of my crazy. Because I had that monkey run around in my head, and I knew intellectually it was a stupid thing, but it wouldn't go away until I gave it a voice.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I need to share some of my crazy with you. I know intellectually this is crazy, but I need to say it out loud so that it sounds crazy to us both. And I said it, and it was a little bit vulnerable. And it took time to work up the courage to say this to my wife of 10 plus years, who I know I can say anything to, and she's not going to be scared away.
Right.
But it's work. It's work, and it's hard, but you got to do it. And like anything else, once you get the reps in, and you normalize it, and you do it and it's not catastrophic, the next time is just a tiny bit less difficult. And then the next time after that, it's just a tiny bit less difficult. And then maybe when it really counts, you can get ahead of it and say, hey, I'm not doing great, instead of waiting until, hey, I'm about to pull this trigger.
Yeah. Yep. And I think recognizing when that you need that help, and the sooner you reach out and you get that, don't be ashamed of it, because there's hundreds of thousands of us out there going through the same thing. You're not alone. And I've personally had Marines reach out to me, and I've kind of give them that little shove to get them in the right direction, and they're still around. I don't know if that was because of me, but they're still here. I've had Marines like my radio operator, Hung Wang. He killed himself. He got out of the Marine Corps. He was in college. 2 weeks before he killed himself, I was supposed to meet up with him, and he stood me up. You know, took I think it was euthanasia. He went to the park, drank some euthanasia with orange juice, and killed himself. Before he did that, he started posting these videos from when we were in Afghanistan. Really funny videos of like the guys like arm wrestling and fighting. He didn't say anything. He just posted the videos. So it was kind of like his way of saying goodbye. And we all tried to get to the last second, and we just couldn't. So that's an example of a guy who was struggling and didn't reach out for help. And he's not here. But I thought it was not funny, but it was like, I was supposed to meet with him 2 weeks before he did it, and he stood me up. And I thought that was weird. And then when I found out that he killed himself, I said, damn it, I wish I could have met him.
Yeah.
I might have been able to pull him off.
I mean, you never know. You don't know if it would have changed anything.
Yeah, you don't know. He might have been committed to doing what he did, but don't wait to the last second. Reach out to somebody. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. So that's my advice, to take that one next step. And I applaud you for being a little vulnerable and encouraging others to do that. And that's why I volunteered to participate. I got nothing to hide. I wanted, if anybody can listen to this podcast and learn one thing, it would be reach out for help. Don't wait.
Yeah. And don't try to Lone Ranger it. Just don't. You're not. You shouldn't be alone. You're not alone. We're not supposed to be alone, especially veterans. We're trained from day one that everything is a unit action. There is no snipers operate in twos at minimum. There's nothing done alone. If you're alone, everything has gone so completely to shit. You always have a unit. You always have family out there. So yeah, use it and ask and say so. Dude, thank you.
My pleasure.
This one was pretty raw, and I appreciate your willingness to go straight there. I really do. I've been pleasantly surprised by how many people have reached out and said, yeah, I've got a story to tell, and are willing to just throw it out. It's frankly inspiring, that we had, because this is a different kind of courage. I know a lot of guys who would run straight at the teeth of gunfire, but wouldn't want to get on a screen and talk and share their raw truth like you are. So my hat is off to you if I were wearing one, and you have my profound respect and my thanks.
My pleasure, Brian. If you ever got anything you need to talk about, you hit me up. And anybody else who watches this, if they need that little bit of a kick in the ass to get up, then let me know. I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah. Hey man, that's the point of these. If somebody watches this and reaches out to one of us or to somebody else, it's time well spent.
Yeah, I think so.
Time well spent. Thanks, dude. I will return you to your morning, my evening, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the willingness, and stay in touch, man.
All right, brother. If you need anything, let me know.
Same.